I'm Daniel Carter, and I never thought my life could unravel with a single ping. It was a Tuesday, March 3rd, 2025 to be exact, when my phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I was stirring a pot of chili, the kind Emily always said warmed her soul. The message was from her, my wife of 8 years. Video sent. The notification read. I smiled, expecting one of her goofy clips. She loved filming the stray cats outside her office. I tapped play. The screen flickered, and there she was laughing, her auburn hair spilling over her shoulders. But she wasn't alone. A man, tall, unshaven, unfamiliar, leaned in, whispering something that made her giggle harder. They were in a car, her car parked somewhere dim. My chest tightened. The camera jostled, her thumb must have slipped, and I saw his hand slide onto her knee. She didn't pull away. The video cut off at 19 seconds. I stood there, spoon frozen mid-stir, the chili bubbling like the blood in my veins. She'd sent it to me by mistake. I knew it instantly. Her lover must have been the intended recipient. My phone buzzed again. Oops, wrong chat. Ignore that, just a work thing. A lie thin as paper. I stared at the screen, my reflection a ghost in the glass. Then I typed, no worries. Chili's almost ready. I hit send. She didn't know I'd seen it. She didn't know I felt my world crack open. And in that moment, I decided she wouldn't know. Not yet. I turned the stove down, my hands steady, my mind racing. Revenge wasn't a word I'd ever clung to before, but it found me that night, sharp and cold, like a blade slipped into my grip. Emily would come home soon, and I'd smile. I'd play the part. But something had already begun to coil inside me, something she'd never see coming. Emily walked through the door at 6:47 p.m., her keys jangling like nothing had changed. "Smells amazing, Dan," she said, kicking off her boots. I glanced over from the stove. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright. Guilt? Excitement? I couldn't tell. I forced a grin. "Chili's your favorite, right?" She nodded, dropping her bag by the couch, oblivious to the storm behind my comm. We ate in the living room, TV murmuring some sitcom neither of us cared about. She chattered work, a rude client, the usual. I nodded, laughed when I was supposed to, but my mind was elsewhere. That video looped in my head. His hand, her laugh, the casual betrayal. She didn't mention it again, didn't even hint at her oops text. She thought I'd bought it. Good. After dinner, she scrolled her phone on the couch, legs tucked under her. I cleared the plates, watching her from the kitchen. Her thumbs danced across the screen, texting him, probably. I dried my hands, slow and deliberate, then grabbed my own phone. "Hey, I called casual as ever. You ever think about taking a trip somewhere new?" She looked up, surprised. "Like where?" I shrugged. Dunno. Somewhere quiet. Just us. Her smile faltered just for a second before she recovered. "Maybe. Sounds nice." That night, she slept soundly beside me, her breathing soft and even. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. A trip wasn't just an idea, it was the seed of something bigger. She'd hurt me, carve a hole in my chest with that video, but I wouldn't yell or confront her. No, I'd build something better, something she'd walk into blind. Revenge didn't need shouting matches, it needed patience. And I had plenty. The next morning, I woke early, 5:12 a.m., and slipped out of bed. Emily was still curled up, a faint snore escaping her lips. I stood there, watching her, the woman I'd promised forever to. How long had it been going on? Weeks? Months? The questions gnawed at me, but I pushed them down. Answers could wait. Action couldn't. At work, I sat in my cubicle at Harper Insurance, staring at spreadsheets that blurred into nonsense. My coworker, Jake, slapped my shoulder. "You good, man? You look like you saw a ghost." I forced a chuckle. Just tired. He didn't push, thank God. I needed space to think. By noon, I decided a cabin. Somewhere remote. I Googled rentals. Hundreds popped up. One caught my eye. A place in the Adirondacks, 3 hours north, surrounded by pines and silence. Perfect. I booked it for next weekend, using my card so she wouldn't suspect. When I texted Emily, surprise. Cabin getaway, just us. Next Saturday. She replied fast. "OMG, really? That's so sweet." 3 heart emojis. I smirked. Sweet wasn't the word. That afternoon, I dug deeper. Her phone was locked, but our iPad wasn't. We shared it for recipes, photos, mindless games. I opened the Messenger app, holding my breath. Her chats loaded, mine at the top, then Mark. Mark. No last name, just a number. I clicked. Messages from yesterday. You free tonight? From him. Can't. Dan's home. From her. My jaw clenched. I scrolled up, weeks of flirty texts, vague plans. Nothing explicit, but enough to confirm it. Mark. The guy from the video. I closed the app, my hand steady despite the fire in my gut. She'd never know I'd seen this either. I'd use it. The cabin wasn't just a getaway anymore. It was a stage. I spent the week planning, every move deliberate. Emily noticed nothing. She hummed while folding laundry, kissed my cheek before bed, played her role like an Oscar winner. I played mine too. You excited for the cabin? I'd ask, and she'd beam. So much. We need this. We. The word stung, but I swallowed it. By Friday, I'd packed clothes, food, a bottle of her favorite Merlot, and something else, a small locked box I slid under the passenger seat of my truck. She didn't need to know about that. Not yet. Saturday morning, we hit the road. The drive was quiet at first, just the hum of tires on asphalt and her playlist, soft indie stuff she loved. I glanced at her, hair tied back, sunglasses perched on her nose. She looked happy. I wondered if she'd been this happy with Mark. You okay? She asked, catching my stare. I nodded, just thinking how lucky I am. She squeezed my hand. I almost laughed. The cabin emerged through the trees, wooden, weathered, perched on a hill overlooking a frozen lake. It's perfect, she gasped, stepping out. I agreed, but for different reasons. No neighbors. No signal. Just us. We unpacked, lit a fire, poured wine. She nestled against me on the couch, the flames crackling. This feels like a fresh start, she murmured. I smiled into her hair. Yeah, it does. That night, she fell asleep fast, wine glass half empty on the table. I didn't sleep. I sat by the fire, staring at the locked box I'd brought inside. Inside it, a burner phone, a notebook, a pen. The real plan started now. She thought this was a romantic escape. She was wrong. The fire popped as I opened the box. The burner phone glowed to life, prepaid, untraceable. I bought it 2 days ago at a gas station, cash only. The notebook held my scribbles, dates, times, snippets from her chats with Mark I'd memorized. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, March 3rd, 2025, video received. Below that, a single word. Why? I didn't need her to answer. I needed her to feel it. Sunday morning, Emily stretched in bed, sunlight spilling through the cabin's frost-laced windows. Let's hike, she chirped. I agreed. Exercise would keep her distracted. We trekked through the woods, her ahead, pointing at deer tracks, oblivious to my silence. My mind churned. Mark. Who was he? A coworker? A random fling? I'd find out. But first, I make her squirm. Back at the cabin, I cooked lunch, grilled cheese, simple, her comfort food. She ate, chatting about the lake, how we should swim if we came back in summer. I nodded, then said, casual as breathing, Hey, you ever think about trust? She froze, sandwich halfway to her mouth. What do you mean? Her voice was too light. I shrugged. Just marriage, takes trust. She laughed, nervous. Of course, Dan. I trust you. I smiled. Good. That afternoon, I left the burner phone on the counter, screen locked, but visible. She noticed it while I chopped wood outside. Through the window, I saw her pick it up, frown, set it down fast. When I came in, she didn't ask. I didn't explain. The seed was planted. Doubt works slow like frost cracking stone. She'd wonder whose phone it was, why I had it. She'd stew. And I'd watch. The air in the cabin thickened that afternoon. Emily kept glancing at the burner phone, her fingers tapping the table, an old habit when she was anxious. I pretended not to notice, humming as I stacked firewood. You want tea? I asked, voice bright. She nodded, distracted. Sure. I boiled water, slipped the phone back into the box while her back was turned. She didn't see, but her eyes followed me after that, wary. We played cards by the fire, gin rummy, her favorite. She won twice, but her laughs were hollow. You're quiet, she said finally, dealing a new hand. I met her gaze. Just enjoying this. You mean no distractions? Her smile flickered. Yeah, no distractions. I let the silence stretch, heavy, deliberate. She shifted, cards forgotten. Dan, is something up? I tilted my head. Should there be? She looked away. Night fell, and I stepped outside, said I needed air. I dialed Mark's number from the burner, one I'd pulled from the iPad chats. It rang twice. Hello. His voice was deep, rough. I stayed silent, let him hear the wind, my breathing. Who is this? He snapped. I hung up, heart pounding. Back inside, Emily was on her phone. Ours had no signal, but she stared at it anyway. Everything okay? I asked. She jumped. Fine. Just checking the time. Liar. I lay awake again, her beside me, restless now. She didn't know I'd called him. She didn't know I'd heard his voice, alive, real, a man who touched my life without permission. The box sat under the bed, my secret weapon. Tomorrow, I'd tighten the noose. She'd feel the walls close in, and I'd still be smiling. Sunday dawned gray, clouds choking the sky. Emily woke late, hair tangled, eyes puffy, like she'd barely slept. I made coffee, handed her a mug. Rough night. I asked, voice soft. She mumbled, yeah, weird dreams. I didn't push. She sipped, staring out the window, while I pulled the burner phone from the box again. This time I texted Mark, she's with me. Stop waiting, sent. No reply came, not yet. We walked to the lake, her suggestion. Ice glistened under the weak sun, and she tossed stones, watching them skid. Dan, she said suddenly, you tell me if something was wrong, right? Her tone was fragile, testing. I crouched, picked up a rock, tossed it. Plink, plink, plink. Sure. You'd tell me too, wouldn't you? She nodded fast. Too fast. I stood, brushed my hands. Let's head back. Inside, her phone buzzed. Our phones had no signal, but the cabin's Wi-Fi flickered on. She grabbed it, eyes widening, then shoved it in her pocket. Work, she said, unasked. I nodded, started chopping carrots for stew. The burner vibrated in my jacket. Mark, who is this? Leave her alone. I smirked, deleted it. She didn't need to see that, but she'd see something soon. Dinner was quiet, stew steaming between us. I waited till she finished, then said, oh, forgot, I found a video on the iPad. Wanna watch? Her face drained white. What video? She croaked. I pulled out my phone, not the burner, opened a random clip of us at the beach last year. This one. Good times. Relief flooded her, but her hands shook. She thought I meant her video. I let her drown in that fear, silent, savoring it. The tension coiled tighter that night. Emily barely spoke after dinner, washing dishes with quick, jerky moves. I sat by the fire, flipping through the notebook from the box. Pages of her betrayal, my plans. I'd added more. March 8, 2025, called him. March 9th, texted. She didn't know, but she felt something. Her eyes darted to me, then away, like a deer sensing a hunter. I stepped outside again, burner in hand. Another call to Mark. This time he answered fast. Who are you? He growled. I let silence hang, then whispered, you'll see. Click. Back inside, Emily was on a couch, blanket pulled tight. Cold out there? She asked, voice thin. Yeah, I said, but it's clearing up. She nodded, didn't meet my eyes. Monday morning, our last day, I upped the game. Let's take a photo, I said, grabbing my phone. She posed by the lake, forced a smile. I snapped it, then said, oh wait, got a better one. I showed her the beach video again, but paused it, zoomed in on her laughing face. You're beautiful here, I said. Then soft, always are. Her lip trembled. Dan, she started, but stopped. Guilt was eating her alive. We packed to leave, and I forgot the burner on the counter again. She saw it, hesitated, then asked, whose is that? I shrugged. Found it in the truck. Weird, huh? Her face went gray. She knew it wasn't hers, wasn't mine, not the one she knew. I turned away, hiding my grin. She'd wonder if it was his, if I'd found him. The drive home was silent, her hands twisting in her lap. She was unraveling. I wasn't done. The ride back was a quiet war. Emily stared out the window, fingers knotted in her scarf. I drove steady, radio off, letting the silence press on her. She broke it once. "You sure you're okay, Dan?" And I just nodded. Never better. She didn't ask again. At home, I unloaded the truck, left the locked box in the garage. She didn't notice, too busy escaping to the shower. I waited till she was asleep that night, then grabbed the burner. Mark had texted again. "Stop this." "I don't know you." I replied, "You will." "Ask her." Sent. I pictured him, pacing, confused, maybe angry. Good. Let him sweat. I slipped into bed. Emily's back to me, a wall of her own making. She'd built it with lies. I'd tear it down with truth. Tuesday, I went to work, left the burner on the kitchen table. Unlocked this time. She'd see the texts. She'd panic. When I got home, it was gone, her face a mask of calm. "Good day?" I asked. She nodded too quick. "Yours." "Same," I said, pouring water, watching her. She cracked by dinner. "Dan, we need to talk." I raised an eyebrow. "Sure. What's up?" She fidgeted, eyes wet. I made a mistake." "A guy at work, Mark. It didn't mean anything." Her voice broke. I set my glass down slow. "A mistake?" She nodded, tears spilling. "I'm so sorry." "It's over, I swear." I leaned back, calm as stone. "How long?" She whispered, "A month." I nodded. "Okay." She blinked. "Okay." I smiled cold. "We'll figure it out." She sobbed, relieved. She thought it was forgiveness. It wasn't. Emily's confession hung in the air, a fragile thread she thought would mend us. I let her believe it. Wednesday, I kissed her forehead before work, said, "We'll be fine." She clung to that, spent the day texting apologies I didn't answer. I had one last move. At lunch, I called a lawyer, Rebecca Stein, a friend from college. "Divorce papers," I told her. Quietly, she didn't ask why, just said, "Give me a week." That night, I cooked again, chili her favorite. Irony wasn't lost on me. She ate tentative, watching me like I might snap. I didn't. I smiled, talked about the weather, the cabin. She relaxed, thinking the storm had passed. After, I handed her a glass of Merlot. To us, I toasted. She echoed it, eyes soft. I sipped, knowing it was goodbye. Friday, Rebecca emailed, papers ready. I printed them at work, tucked them in my bag. At home, Emily was on the couch, hopeful. "Dan, I love you," she said, desperate. I sat beside her, pulled out the folder. "I know you do." Her smile faded as I slid the papers over. "What's this?" she whispered. "Read it," I said, voice even. She opened it, saw dissolution of marriage, and gasped. "No, Dan, please." I stood. "You sent me the video, Em. By accident." I saw everything. Her face crumpled, hands shaking. I waited. I continued. "Planned. You confessed, sure, but I'm done." She sobbed, begging, but I walked to the door, bag in hand. "Mark can have you." I left, her cries fading behind me. The twist. I'd recorded her confession on the burner, sent it to Mark that morning with a note. "She's all yours." Revenge wasn't loud. It was final.